Welcome back to the Tree Surgeons podcast. Today, I've got a very special episode where we're going to be talking about lorries in ARB. It comes up all the time on all of the forums about someone's got a 5-ton or one that runs 7.5 ton. What's the pros? What's the cons? So what I thought, rather than me, who I've never had lorries talking about it, I've invited Swift Tree Services, Adam Lawson and Stephen Warner to the podcast. Welcome, guys.
Hello, thank you very much.
So these guys are elite members on the Tree Surgery Mastermind. They've been part of the mastermind for the last 18 months. And one thing that's quite apparent is that Adam loves lorries. Steve loves them too, but Adam's got a huge passion for them. He's already done a masterclass to the masterminders on the pros and cons of running lorries in your ARB business. And we thought, actually, why is this just an exclusive thing to the mastermind? Because actually this is a massive benefit to the industry of people understanding the pros and cons of, and more pros, I must say, of running lorries in ARB, to the point that it's now made me change my opinion. And we've now got people going through their HGV license, and we're now going to be adding lorries to our fleet. But before we get into lorries, let's just talk a little bit about where and how Swift started. So how did you guys meet, and did you know each other, and how did it all start?
Yeah, so going back quite a way. To be fair, Adam started the business 2008.
Yeah, sole trader in 2008,
Yeah, running pretty small, weren't you? A couple of people.
So just one-man band type?
Like we all started.
Domestic work?
All domestic.
Yeah,
everything domestic.
I was working elsewhere with a tree surgeon, and we were introduced through friends.
Friends linked with your parents lived near where I lived, didn't they?
Yeah,
we were sort of introduced, fell into each other one day, didn't we?
I was moving back to the area, looking to set up doing some bits and bats of tree work. Adam was doing work. We got introduced. I did a couple of days helping out, and things spiraled from there, really. It didn't take long for us to make the decision, do you know what, this is daft trying to have these two companies both trying to build in the same direction. I think Adam made the suggestion, should we chuck everything in together?
We were sat having lunch in the Land Rover one day, and it was raining, and we were having a butty, and we a very simple sort of me blurting something out in my head led to a 12-year limited company co-directorship, didn't it, really? Do you fancy doing this together? Instead of me helping you and you helping, should we just crack on together? And that was it, literally, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't the best plan.
I don't think we can say that's the ideal way to form a business partnership.
It was a cunning business plan.
It was
made in the Land Rover. I'm sure lots of plans have been made in Land Rovers by Tree Surgeons.
It was very fortuitous. Definitely worked out right for us, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But it was not a well-structured business plan.
But there must have been something that clicked originally for you to go, actually, this could work, because I started in a business partnership from the beginning, and it became quite apparent after about 3 months that I was doing 80% of everything, and it just didn't work. So there must have been some energy there that you've gone, actually, this could work. This has got legs.
Yeah, we've always got on. We got on straight away, which was great. But we're very conscious, and we noticed straight away we both got very different strengths, both operationally when we were out on the tools together, but equally in the background, but in the office stuff, we have different things that we particularly excel at. Adam's strengths and my strengths are really very different, and the two things synchronise pretty well.
That's a really good way to have a business partnership. Having two of the same person just never works. Having two me's wouldn't work, and I'm sure it'd be the same.
We've known that very.
We've joked about if there was two of me, what would happen? If there was two of Adam, what would happen? And
exactly that. You guys, like, from just working with you in the last 18 months, it's quite clear that you've got a great brand, you've got a great foundation of a business, and you've done really well to build a work-based customer base in your area where work comes to you because of what you've built and the service that you deliver. So you've absolutely smashed it, really, to get to where you've got to.
Good foundations, that's one way that we put it, and what other people have said to us is, we got the foundations right, we've grown organically, not rushed to expand. But the topic of today's conversation, one of the foundations that we've put in place is the way we run our fleet, the way the decisions we made about purchasing, specification of, and setting the stall out with our team based around an appropriate fleet for the work that we do. It's been a massive factor, hasn't it?
Yeah, very much.
No, before we get into lorries, I just think building those foundations, I think the biggest mistake I've made in the past is being too impatient to just try and go to the moon so quickly. So I think you've done well to be patient and build those foundations. And I'm really excited about working with you in the future to see, like, now adding in the other things we talk about into that and seeing where it goes. But so tell me, now I look at Swift and I see the branding, I see the lorries, I see how good it looks, but I guess it didn't start like that. So how was the fleet from the beginning?
So, a very brief summary of the fleet. So, we've gone from starting off with a Land Rover Defender. I'm a Land Rover fan. That's why I chose it. We weren't great at proper planning in the early days. I like this guy. I'll work with him, and I like that Land Rover. So I drive that. It's a little bit of a I fancy that. So I'll have one of those. But yeah, and that's not how you need to grow a sustainable business. But it's fine when you're a sole trader. I like Land Rovers, so I bought a Land Rover. I had a tipping body put on that Land Rover, and I uprated it myself. And this is where the kind of detail starts. I bought a Land Rover that was a standard pickup. I wanted to put a tipping body on it, so I uprated it to 3.5 tons, which was the kind of heavy-duty Land Rover spec. And I did that myself and got the paperwork through DVLA. So that was fleet decision number one, was if I'm going to have a Defender, I want one that's capable and that will carry the weight of a chip box. Also had a 3.5 ton tipping trailer, which we've still got now. We've also still got the Land Rover now. So these two first items are still with us, which is a bit of a testament to their build quality and longevity. So Land Rover Defender, 3.5 ton tipping trailer was the start of our fleet. Tipping trailer is brilliant, 3.5 ton gross, carry about 2.7 tons. So you've got loads of payload, fill it with chip or timber.
Loads more than a Transit.
Yeah, more than a Transit. Similar size body to what you get on most Transits, but you fill it and it's still legal. Great for timber because it's low down. You can open up the sides nice and wide, so you're carrying timber out the back garden or
trolley,
trolley,
and then you can flip it in. So you're minimising your manual.
Which is a Transit's like chest height or above, isn't it? So I swear I killed my back just lifting massive rings onto the back of my first Transit. Because that's what I started with, was a red Transit tipper.
Most people do.
And it was just trying to and we didn't have Avants and things like that.
Worky
quads, and it was just like lifting the biggest bit because you're trying to save time on getting it out there. So I never even thought about a tipping trailer. Like, it just makes a lot of sense.
It was great. It's tons of timber that's carried. I mean, we used to tow it behind the Discovery. I went and bought another Land Rover. We had Discovery as well with the repair bills. Discovery towed the tipping trailer. Defender with its tipping body had a 6-inch chipper behind it, and that was basically our combo, wasn't it? For quite a while. We did probably a good 5 or 6 years where we had a team of 3. Land Rover and chipper, disco and trailer, and the trailer was either getting chipped into or was carrying the timber, and we did all right, didn't we?
Yeah, helped by the fact that we worked in a pretty localised geographical area, so chipping into the Land Rover and having it go and tip off
wasn't the end of the world.
Wasn't a big deal for us, but some days we might do 3 or 4 trips back to the yard, which when you think about the lost time and the cost of fuel was...
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, and equally with the tipping trailer, even though that had a fair capacity, if we're on a decent job or we're doing conifers, which a lot of domestic work involves thick conifers, it might not be particularly challenging.
It's bread and butter, isn't it?
There's a lot of it, volume-wise. You could be ripping a hedge out or dropping some big conifers where, you can get it to the chipper quite easily, but my God, you soon fill your trucks and your trailer. So even with a decent-sized tipping trailer, we'd still regularly do a couple of trips a day.
Yeah. Or you'd be wanting to tip off the chip so that then the timber's not going on top. Because otherwise then you've got to handball it off, which is losing the point.
Yeah, we ran like that for a while. One big thing that I learned, and I know a lot of people use 4-wheel drive tippers, mostly Hiluxes now, because Defenders are sadly not what they were. But one thing that I did learn about the 4-wheel drive tipper concept is from a weight perspective and legality perspective, they are not too bad when they're full of chip in terms of their gross vehicle weight. Our Defenders are 3.5 ton gross. When it was full of chip with the original body that we had on it, I took it to the weighbridge one day because it looked very low on the back end. So I thought, I'm overloading this, I'll check it out. Popped on the weighbridge. The gross vehicle weight was fine. It was at 3.4 tons. So we were just about in with the gross vehicle weight, which I was happy about. Front axle was okay, back axle was grossly overloaded. So that was down to the geometry of the body. It wasn't how much chip was in it, it was where the weight was being exerted on that back axle. So it failed on that. So we redesigned the rear body. We had it re-chassied at the time because we were putting on the galvanised chassis. So when we had that done, we cut the back body off, didn't we? Yeah. Took about 18 inches off the back body. So it went from being a long overhang to a very short, stubby body. Obviously carries less chip, but it was running legally, wasn't it? It handled better, wasn't as top heavy, wasn't back heavy, and unless you tried really hard now, shouldn't be able to overload it.
I remember our old Land Rover tipper, and that used to just come back into the yard, and it just used to be sat down. You could actually see it sloping down now, and you just knew it was massively overweight. I could see the pressure it used to put on it. I remember what the main rod came out of it once. They were driving down the road, and about a metre, I don't know if you know, on the axles of a Defender, the centre rod can come out of the wheel. Yeah. That literally come out a metre. And I was like thinking it's like something literally clotheslined some people driving down the road, because I think the pressure just popped it out.
Well, heavy in it. We'll perhaps touch on that in a little bit about what are the pros and cons arguments about running 7.5 tonners over 3.5 tonners. But so that was where we got to, an appropriately spec'd Land Rover tipper that we adjusted and we got right, we got legal, and a 3.5 ton tipping trailer. We got to a point where sort of the Discovery was my car and it was getting battered and it was costing me a lot of money to repair because it was a Discovery. So it was great at towing. I still advocate they are the best tow vehicle out there, but it was getting battered.
I owned a Discovery too that ended up costing me a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
It was a beast.
They're a money hemorrhager, but they are very, very good at what they do.
Yeah, agree.
But we started to look at how busy we were with loads of work, didn't we? Yeah. We were busy, sort of productivity was going up. And we started thinking, we can't keep running like this. We need to get the Discovery away from the day-to-day trailer towing and get something a bit more appropriate for Chip.
Essentially, we're having to run two vehicles day in, day out, and they weren't particularly cheap vehicles to be running.
No. So we had a chat about it, didn't we? And we started looking at what are our options? What else could we have? I've always known deep down that as an industry, it's an unintended consequence through no fault of our own. It's an unintended consequence of the DVLA changes back in 96, 97, where the licensing altered, whereby you lost the right to drive a 7.5 tonner with a standard car license and you lost the right to tow a big trailer with a standard car license. And that's why, as an industry, for the last 15 years or so, we've been, 20 years, we've been trapped in 3.5 ton vans and 750 kg chippers.
Yeah.
Because legally, anything more than that, you've got to go through the rigmarole of changing your license, which costs money and time, etc.
Yeah, I guess the biggest change we've had is a few years ago with COVID when they decided that we didn't need a trailer license anymore, which then opened the door a bit more to everyone having 8-inch chippers.
Yeah, and that you already see that. That's another reason where I think there is a slight shift towards bigger trucks now, because if you have a bigger chipper, all of a sudden you need a bigger truck. Yeah. That has probably helped the industry slightly, but it was something that had held it back for a long time. We were fortunate enough, both of us didn't have any of those limits, did we? So,
yeah, I was just going to try and mention that. I suppose one of the initial barriers that you will be considering straight away is, well, I'm going to have to get a different licence to drive a bigger truck. When we were weighing up first moving from the Land Rover, we were in the fortunate position. Adam had an HGV Class 2 and I'm really old, so I was okay to drive.
You get Grandad's licence without. I'm glad I'm sat this far away from you, so yeah, Grandad's licence.
I have Grandad rights to drive a 7.5 tonner. So yeah, that was the first barrier. Wasn't even there, which I think realistically did make us straight away.
It opened up the thought process more that we're not limited to what we can, as people, we're not limited to what we can drive, so why would we limit ourselves?
And particularly where the company was, we were
still involved every day.
Very much on the tools, both of us every day, and just running one team. So
we got over that. That was just a conversation between us. Why don't we explore that? We then did like a cost exercise, so went and got a quote for a 7.5 ton Mitsubishi Canter, Fuso Canter, with an R body, medium to long wheelbase, not the longest, no frills, bog standard out of the factory, but with an R body, brand new from a Mercedes dealership, $34,000 plus that back in.
Yeah, it's a few years ago.
Back end of 2018, we would probably place the order, so late 2018.
And what would that compare to a 3.5 tonner at the same time?
About the same.
About the same.
So if we've gone to
but
Ford,
for a lot more lorry.
Exactly. So if we've gone to Ford and spec to Transit, 3.5 ton Transit tipper with an R body probably would have been similar money.
Yeah.
Difference being very simple calculation, payload, price per ton means that you're getting a lot more efficiency out of the 7.5 tonner versus a 3.5 tonner because they cost you the same to purchase, but one can carry double what the other can carry. So that simple costing exercise was, again, it was a no-brainer, wasn't it? It was barrier gone. It's not about the money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also I was a bit surprised, I'm less familiar with lorries in general. I was a bit surprised at what a 7.5 ton Canter looked like. It wasn't this massive truck without knowing a lot about it. And I think lorry is going to be, we do domestic work. This isn't going to work. People aren't going to want that on their drive and what have you. But then you look into a bit more, I can't really tell the difference between that 7.5 tonner and a 3.5 tonner. It's very similar, really.
No, when I bought my Grafter, it turned up in the yard. One of the boys went and picked it up from Bristol, and I looked at it and went, have they given us a 7.5 tonner? Because actually it's the other way around. Like the 3.5 tonners look almost just as big as the 7.5 tonners. And no, it was a 3.5 ton. But as you say, they're
not that dissimilar.
They're not dissimilar, but they are a lot more nimble, aren't they?
Yeah. I think the shift has been just in the Japanese market that's come over to the UK. So Isuzu and Mitsubishi are the two main ones that were game changers 15-ish years ago, I think, when they became readily available in the UK, and their 7.5 tonners 4-cylinder engine, no air brakes, much smaller, much more nimble, but still with the carrying capacity. So therefore, you get a smaller vehicle, you get reduced running costs because it's smaller engine, no air system for the brakes. It's one less thing to go wrong, I suppose. And you get more payload because they are lighter to begin with. An old 7.5 tonner, more of a standard truck 7.5 tonner like a DAF or a Iveco Euro Cargo or whatever, they were heavy to begin with, so they were weighing in at probably 4.5 ton, 5 ton before you even start with an hard body on, whereas your Fuso Canter or your Isuzu Grafter, they're lighter weight anyway. Getting over that sort of, what does a 7.5 tonner look like? Actually, it's not a truck anymore, is it? It's a big van. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's a big van with a phenomenal payload, really. So we went through that exercise, didn't we, of cost, of what does a vehicle feel like, how big is it, what do we think in terms of accessibility to driveways, what do we think about manoeuvring, etc. And really, you compare it to a modern Transit or a Merc Sprinter or whatever, not that much difference, was it really? A little bit longer, a little bit wider, but not by a huge amount. So we nailed the cost, we nailed the practicalities. We were fortunate enough to have the licenses anyway, but we can talk about that in a little while because it's not a massive hurdle to get through anyway. And then the only other thing was the operator's license. That is a barrier that is quite often put up by people, and it's a barrier which I get asked about quite a bit, or if I'm commenting on stuff on Hard Talk, I'll often jump in and answer a question about an operator's license to put people's minds at rest. It's not a particularly difficult process. It's got scary written all over it because it's an operator's license, but it really isn't. For the restricted operator's license, which is what you need in ARB, if you're just carrying your own tools and your own stuff, including chip, back from your own jobs, back to your own yard, you only need a restricted license. Easy to come by, about £700. It takes about 8 weeks. You don't have to jump through mega hoops. You've got to put a little advert in the paper which explains where your operating centre is going to be. You've got evidence you've got a couple of quid in the bank to maintain the vehicles, and that's probably about £2,000 per vehicle, so it's not a huge amount. And that's pretty much it.
Why do you need one?
The legality says that you need one to operate any vehicle over 3.5 tonne.
Yeah.
So anything over 3.5 tonne gross vehicle weight or maximum.
So even if it's you're running a 5 tonne Iveco or
so if you're running Transit, anything that's plated at over 3.5 tonne maximum authorised mass requires an operator's licence. The zone between 3.5 tonne and 7.5 tonne is an interesting one because you've got Ford Transit, Merc Sprinter, Iveco. They all do vans between 3.5 and 7.5. So you can get a 4.5 tonne Transit, you can get a 5 tonne Sprinter, you can get a 5 or a 6 tonne Iveco. Even though it's a Transit and it looks exactly the same as a 3.5 tonner, if it's plated at more than 3.5, it needs an operator's licence. Same with the Iveco Daily. If you've got a 5 tonne version, even though to the untrained eye it looks identical to a 3.5, but it's dead easy. Again, it just wasn't a big deal.
It's just a paperwork exercise,
yeah, it really
and not a particularly challenging one.
No. If you're running out of a yard that's off highway, and you can get one on your driveway, I know people have got operator's licence for one vehicle running off the driveway, it's probably not the best. But if you've got a yard and you're running off somewhere that's off the highway and you want an operator's licence for a couple of 7.5 tonners, I don't think you're going to struggle. There'll be people out there that will come back and say, I've had one refused. I'm not saying it's an absolute done deal, but I don't think most people would struggle.
Yeah.
You certainly wouldn't struggle here.
No, it doesn't have to be your premises either. Like, you don't have to own the premises in order to get an operator's license. It can be a rented yard.
Yeah. So that was another barrier that we trod down, didn't we? Quite straightforward.
Yeah.
The good thing that they offered when I applied for ours, I don't know if they still do, they did a half-a-day course. So I had to go and sit in order to get the licence once the application went in. Or I think it was once I just asked for the forms or something. I could even put the application in. But they said you need to come and sit a half-a-day course at a DVSA depot, which was good. So sat there with the nasty people that pull the trucks over.
Which is basically Foster, right?
Yep. Yeah, and went and sat a half-a-day course with them. They were great. They just explained it as it is. You need to do this, you need to do that. You need to be mindful of driver hours, you need to be mindful of maintenance recording on your truck. You need to have them inspected every 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. Whatever suits you and whatever you decide is what you decide. So just to touch on that, one of the conditions of running an HGV or anything over 3.5 tonne is the vehicle needs to be inspected by a competent person. Trucks that are running heavy and that are running tough life will be done 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I pushed ours to 12 and they were happy with that based on the lack of mileage because we don't do long journeys and we don't do big miles. And also it spends most of its day sat still. Yeah. So even when it is sat still, it's just being chipped into. It's not got a particularly tough life. So they were happy with us pushing our inspection schedule to 12 weeks. So we have a truck mechanic come in. It's a couple £100 per inspection, but he comes in and inspects the vehicle every 12 weeks.
And what's he looking for when he inspects a vehicle? Is that like us, like me, getting one of my guys to do a vehicle check?
bit more involved.
Yeah.
So it's a standard DVSA compliant form. It's a chunky form.
Yeah.
It's very detailed. They are checking not quite every nut and bolt, but they are looking at sort of suspension, steering, bushes, condition of the chassis, looking in detail at whether there's any damage whatsoever. If it's a truck with an air system, they look at the air system in a lot of detail. The cab's up, they're checking the cab mounts. There's a lot to it, but a decent truck mechanic will be round it in an hour, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like an elongated MOT on a car. Go on.
So I was just going to say, but the nice thing about that is you're looking for any issues and you're finding if there is something that's
Before it
starting to
happens.
go
Absolutely.
wrong, so much better to find it sat in your yard than something fall off on the road.
Yeah, or on the way to site, and then you get a down team of the day.
Exactly.
I mean, the amount of times I've had vans break down, it's relentless. I've bought brand new vans, I've bought 3-year-old vans, 5-year-old vans, whatever age van I'd bring, because they're used, and we'll probably talk about this a bit more in a bit, but because they're used so hard, the amount of times they break down, and it's not necessarily just the cost of the repair, it's the downtime, it's phoning the customer, it's that whole knock-on effect that has your whole schedule, everything. And just when you were talking then, Adam, I thought exactly the same thing, Steve, is like, at least like you're seeing a problem before it comes. So every 12 weeks, someone's going, you're good, or actually you just need to replace X, Y, Z, which is needed anyway.
It all becomes preventative, or 90% becomes preventative. Obviously, something can happen in 12 weeks.
It does,
But generally, to have an expert truck mechanic, and the guy that comes and does us, this is what he does for a day job, is he inspects trucks. So this is his job. So to know you've got somebody of that knowledge and of that detail looking at your truck, actually it's a nice feeling, because it's like, that truck is road legal, it is roadworthy, it is safe, it is running right. And there's been very few issues that we've had with any of the trucks now, because we've got more, that hasn't been picked up by the mechanic. You know, we don't suffer many breakdowns with the vehicles that are operators license bracketed. You don't suffer many breakdowns. You're more likely to have a breakdown with the ones that aren't, because they're not being inspected. Yeah. So that's the condition of the ops license, is the 12 weekly inspections. Again, some people think that's scary. They're like, oh my God, it'll be off the road for this, that, and the other. You change your mindset, like you've just said. It's not oh God, he's going to condemn the vehicle every 12 weeks. Look at it the other way, is that he's going to keep the vehicle running. You know, it's going to keep you on the road.
It's a small cost, it needs to be factored in. It is a cost, but it's a peace of mind, and it's like I say, it's so much better to pick something up when it's sat in your workshop or sat in your yard than halfway to a job.
Yeah, the main thing you want to be able to make consistent profit in a tree surgery business is your team or teams out 5 days a week, making you money every single day and not having downtime because something's broken.
Yeah. So, the operator's license, again, ticking a box, barrier crushed. We ordered the vehicle, took a while to come, it was new. But it landed, and we had ourselves a nice new 7.5 ton truck, big tool locker, big tipping body, loads of carrying capacity for tools, for kit, for ladders.
Tools not in the back, tools in the tool locker, so you're not having to unload them when you get to site, chip into it, and then not chucking them on the chips, and then have to get them out when you get back. And
losing stuff in the chip.
We do get the occasional saw tipped off in the yard, not from our vehicles.
And we spec'd it right. Again, it's a little bit of a kind of my sort of, I'm going to say passion, which sounds really sad, and some people are going to laugh at that.
A little bit.
But my passion for trucks.
We don't judge.
No, don't judge me. But I do like trucks, I do like vehicles, and I like to see working vehicles specified correctly, properly. And I believe it's right. If you're going to expect a vehicle to do a job, then get it right from the off. So we thought carefully about the spec of that truck. We got the body the right size, we got the locker the right size, we got the lighting right, we got the ladder rack right. Everything was thought through so that on day one when it landed, we got all our kit, we threw it on it, and it was all neat, tidy, everything in its place, job done. And even forgetting about carrying capacity and chip and legalities, just to be able to get a 3-man team, 3-person team, with a slightly bigger cab as well, where you can comfortably fit 3 people in them, to get a 3-person team to a job with the right kit that's not rammed in the back and that's not rolling around the cab with them, that in itself has got a benefit, hasn't it? You've got
definitely.
A proper truck that can carry the tools to the job as well, regardless of the chip it's carrying away. And we never looked back, did we? I remember day one as pootling off to do the first job and thinking, this feels good, this is right, this is how to do it. Since then, fast forward, but we've grown the fleet. We've got a couple of pickups that we've bought to tow. They're not HGVs, but we've got a couple of Ford Rangers that do the towing of the plant machinery. They're great. Again, fit for purpose. They're all right at what they do. We've got an 18-ton Iveco with a HIAB with a grapple saw on, which again moved it up a gear. Thought, we've gone to 7.5 tons. Now a barrier. We're chipping fine. We can carry loads of chip, but Big timber is usually, as we take on bigger jobs, we like to be able to move big timber. Because we already had the operator's licence, we thought, let's get an 18 tonner.
I think that's the thing, once you've got the operator's licence, and you do need to specify what vehicles or a number of vehicles, and the advice
we put 3 on it from the beginning. Yeah.
So you did. So you just already had that. So you
We
could just
already
go
had
and get
the
another couple.
licence
You
to get
sort
through.
of
Yeah.
Oh, we might as well get another wagon. Costs wise, bigger trucks.
It was used, but they are incredibly cheap compared to transits or whatever. An 18 tonner with a HIAB that was a few years old. It certainly wasn't new, but my God, that was a lot of truck for the money, wasn't it?
And how much was that?
The truck itself, £7,500.
Wow.
And it's got a beefy HIAB on it that's a decent size. Now, we spent quite a lot of money on it.
A few quid on it. Yeah.
Shortened the rear body to make it a bit more nimble, had some sides put on it, had it sprayed, had it well inspected, had a few repairs done on it.
It looks good though.
Looks the business.
Looks the part.
It's only done 180,000 miles, which for a truck is nothing. And we invested in a grapple saw for the crane.
Yeah, the grapple saw was almost an afterthought. It was completely an afterthought. We didn't buy it to be a grapple saw vehicle. We bought it to carry timber back to the yard because
Who wants to cut timber up?
We'd done a few jobs where the timber was easily accessible, and we were able to get it down in pretty big lumps. And then you look at it and you're thinking, how are we going to get that away? Obviously, it was part of the plan for the job, but then you think there's a better way of doing this.
We had a tractor and trailer for a bit, didn't we?
We did have a tractor and
We
trailer.
had a tractor with a front loader and a grain trailer. We did that for a while for the timber, and that was all right, but the tractor was awful on the road. If you're going any sort of distance, it's an old tractor.
Oh yeah, I had quite a new Voltra and it was still awful on the road. And I did quite a lot in that around sort of COVID time. We had a Voltra and a timber lorry, but again, you're limited to how far you can go. Yeah. It's all right if you
big as well, big long unit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big long unit, and even that, like running a tractor it's not cheap. I remember having to replace tyres and everything. I think it's a go-to thing in our industry. There's a lot of people that buy tractors and trailers. I think, yes, forestry side, I get it. Yes, if you're working within a 20-mile radius, but like all of our work, we work within a 90-mile radius of Southampton doing commercial work. It just doesn't work. That's why we had a fast track and a Voltra, and we sold them both just because it just couldn't get them out working enough to justify it.
The difference, having got rid of the tractor and then a couple of years later bought the Iveco with the crane, the difference in terms of the right vehicle to drive on the road, pick timber up and bring it back to the yard is a truck with a crane. Yeah. Tractors are brilliant, and you say tractors are great off highway. If you need to get off highway, absolutely fantastic. And for the odd bit of road work, yeah, fine, they do the job. But really, the truck with a crane was so much more appropriate, and it was cheaper, a lot cheaper to buy, and has been cheaper to run, I think, as well. So we got that, and that was lorry number 2, wasn't it? That's a brilliant piece of kit now with the grapple saw.
Yeah, the grapple saw is big difference.
Just a game changer in it. And then we've just yesterday purchased truck number 3. So we've got another 7.5 tonner, which we picked up yesterday. Not brand new, we've got it second hand, which is an interesting concept again, because we didn't have the money to buy a new one. They're expensive now. So the equivalent 7.5 tonner new to match what we bought 5 years ago is now 54 grand. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
But again, that's what you'd pay for a 3.5 ton.
Exactly. So they've all gone up.
Yeah.
54 grand now as opposed to 34, but 54k for a 7.5 tonner or 50 grand for a transit. It's all the same ratio. It's the same, aren't they?
It's all the same place. And quite interestingly, you guys come down from Cheshire down to Southampton to this mastermind, and the other day it made me laugh because you messaged me and said we're just going via Somerset.
To pick up a truck.
Which, if you know geography, is via and isn't. But
south.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went via Somerset yesterday to pick up a used canter, didn't we? Another 7.5 tonner. Yeah. One thing that's worth talking through about that as well. So we've gone and bought a 6-year-old Fuso canter. It's done the best part of 70,000 miles. It's not done a lot of miles.
It's basically the same age as our existing one.
Yeah, pretty much. Been owned by a utility company all its life. So one owner, a utility company that does work on the roads. So it's got a tarmac tipping body on it. It's been inspected every 6 weeks, and the guy told us, he said Conways, who used to own it, their inspection routine on the ops license is 6 weekly. So it's been inspected every 6 weeks for its entire life. And when you look at it and you tip the body up and have a look underneath it, there's loads of new parts on it. It's been well looked after. The chassis is mint. You can see there's new parts, there's new this, new that. It runs sweet as a nut. It drives really steady. It's soft, it's supple, it's fine. If you looked at a 6-year-old Transit that had a hard life,
I've bought many 6-year-old Transits. I've even bought them, and a month later, like clutch has fallen out or something like that. You're right.
Different world. And we spent
it is
10.9 plus the VAT yesterday on that truck. So 11 grand on that truck And I drove it for the best part of an hour from Somerset to here. And it felt like almost like brand new. It was absolutely brilliant. And you think to yourself, again, a lot of truck for the money. It's 11 grand, but it's a 7.5 tonner. Yeah, we're going to have to do a bit of cosmetic work on it. It's going to have a respray, but that's our choice. It's going to have an hard body built on the existing steel floor of the existing tipper. So that's going to be a couple of grand. But in general, for probably 12 or 13 grand, we'll have a 7.5 ton ARB tipper that matches the one we've currently got. Still with lots of life left in it, because it's only done 70,000 miles, and it's been rigorously inspected and maintained by a large employer compliant company.
Yeah, you take one look at it and it's got compliance really.
Yeah, it's full of cameras and lights, and it talks to you when you turn it left and stuff. And so it's like, this has been well thought through, respect. So it's used, but it's still got a hell of a lot of life. And that really made us think, did you know what, interesting, we knew we were doing this podcast with you today, and we thought that's a valid point to make to people, that you don't have to buy them brand new, but buying a used 7.5 tonner, you are likely to get a much better truck than a used 3.5 tonner for the same money.
Yeah. I can't believe, since we put Tom, one of our guys, through his HGV, I've been looking on eBay and Facebook Marketplace, and I'm amazed at how much truck you can get for the money.
A lot of truck for the money.
Loads. Yeah.
And I think there's more sense of reliability in buying used trucks because of the operator's license process and the inspection regime.
Yeah.
When you're getting something, if it's come from a company direct, it's been really well maintained. Yeah. And it gives you a lot more confidence in buying a used car. Almost, because all the cars had is an annual MOT.
Yeah, or you do what I've done in the past, which I've bought multiple vans off of other tree surgery businesses, and then you realise that you're buying off of other tree surgery businesses that are towing and putting weight in the back, and no wonder that you then buy something that's 5-6 years old and then have lots of challenges with it for coming years afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, particularly with a 3.5 ton truck coming from the ARB world, there's every chance it's not really been 3.5 tons for.
Yeah, exactly that.
You hear a lot of sort of people with problems with. I'm not picking on transits. I just know they're a common truck. They're a common vehicle, and they always have been in the ARB industry. So it's not about bashing transits. I'm sure they're a decent van. We've got 2 Ford Rangers. They're not bad vehicles in terms of Ford commercial.
They're cheap to repair.
But the issue with them is not the base vehicle, it's the use it gets. So if you're going to run a 3.5 ton vehicle that's been designed to run at that, if you're going to run it overweight, and we won't say how much overweight by, but the potential for running them overweight.
Let's say we're running it at the limit at 3.5 tons day in, day out. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, even that's going to give it a hard life.
Well, on the limit all the time.
All the time on the limit. And let's be honest, in ARB, it's very easy to go way over.
Yeah, sometimes it just needs more than a wheelbarrow of weight when you're overweight.
Yeah. So there's a reason why people have issues with diffs, clutches, dual mass flywheels, chassis, rear axles, because they're being run at the limit, or let's be honest, they're being run over the limit. So that's why they don't last, and that's why your repair bills go through the roof.
To give it context, I think it was 2 years ago, we were running 6 teams. So I think between 6 teams, we'd always need 8 or 9 tippers, all 3.5 ton. And I think our repair bill for 1 year was £52,000. And I remember looking at that going, we need to change something. That's when it was 3 years ago, because that's when we bought our first brand new Iveco. And I looked at it and went, something's got to change, because this is insane, the amount of money we're spending. And what we used to do is buy 3-year-old vans, because they depreciate enough for them to be affordable. But my idea was that they wouldn't be as battered as something that was 5-10 years old. Yeah. So we started buying brand new. But then even now we've got that brand new Iveco we've got is not, I don't mean necessarily cosmetically, but we've definitely had a clutch and a flywheel done already, and probably going to need another one in the near future. We've had brakes done. It was a new vehicle, but we've still had to spend a fair bit on it of maintenance. So we know that they're getting on the limit, if not more, and pushed hard.
So conversely, our Canter that we've had now for 5 years, nearly six years this year, it's done 32,000 miles or something. So it is low mileage, but say it doesn't spend much time on the road. But we've now got a big chipper. We've got a 12-inch chipper, so it regularly does get filled to the back doors, doesn't it? So we are running that at 7.5 ton, and it's towing a 2.5 ton chipper. That has, other than a squeaky fan belt that was replaced from the warranty, and other than servicing and inspections, that's cost us nothing.
Yeah,
there's been no mechanical defect on that vehicle. It's not gone through any discs, any pads. any suspension components, any steering components, any clutches, any flywheels, nothing.
Wow.
And I know there'll be people out there that'll say, oh, mine's crap, mine's cost me. There's a bit of luck there, maybe.
Yeah.
But just as a comparison to what story you've just told, our 7.5 tonner that's running at well below capacity a lot of days, or at capacity but never really over, is lasted much longer.
Yeah.
Because it's designed to do that.
And then that takes
the transits aren't.
Yeah, and that takes the whole barrier out. Oh, it might cost me 700 quid for my operator's license. It's going to cost me a little bit of money for my 12 weeks checks. It's going to cost me a bit to get my guys through the license. When you compare it to the tens of thousands of pounds that we spent on repair bills. And that's only one real benefit, isn't it? Just the repair bill in itself. And then you can take into consideration, like you say, it's not driving to site backwards and forwards.
Oh, the trips.
Yeah.
The reduction in trips was phenomenal.
Yeah, I think when we certainly, I was thinking when we first got it, I think this is going to be a bit expensive on fuel. This means a 4-litre engine or whatever, compared to running 2 Land Rovers back and forth.
A lot of trips.
So, yeah, and then equally, we're just looking at writing our first tender, and we're going to be mentioning the fact that we run trucks. We're not doing back and forth trips to the yard. It's an environmental consideration. We're not using as much fuel and that sort of thing.
It's a massive bonus there.
Yeah.
Just like efficiency as well, you're going away from the vehicle itself, but when the vehicle's there with the handbrake on, it's sat there on the job all day. The efficiency of your team with a 7.5 tonner, particularly if you're travelling a bit for your work, it's generally, unless it's like a sort of clearance job or it's very much big conifers roadside or something, there's not many days where a team of 3 go in doing fairly normal tree work, as in not necessarily massive takedowns, but pretty standard stuff. It's very rare that truck gets filled and needs to be tipped off, isn't it?
It would be an unusual job, which gives us the confidence that we've always worked very locally, but now we're trying to push out further and do more maybe commercial work or what have you. So we might have to travel a bit further, but we have the confidence to go. We'll do a day's work. We'll get back to the yard. Shouldn't be an issue.
And it's all about productivity in our game, isn't it? The more you can do, the more you're going to earn. The more you can pay your guys, the better kit you can have. And it's all about comes back down to how much can you get done between the hours of 8 and 4, whatever hours you work on site.
You guys earn no money driving a truck to and from the yard 2 or 3 times a day. They earn their money being in the tree or on the ground. Processors will get it through the chipper and do the job.
Exactly that.
It's not a good use of a tree surgeon's time to be driving around looking for a tip site. And a slight off topic, but looking for tip sites. So our yard up in Cheshire, if anybody needs to tip off, SK10 postcode. But genuinely, we open our yard up for a free tip. And we get a lot of interest. But the reason that works and the reason we get a lot of people tipping off there is when you've got people working a fair way away from their own yard, we get an awful lot of people that aren't anywhere near us, but that have to tip off 2 or 3 times in a day because they're doing a job nearby.
So you put it on the Green Line RB app?
It's on Green Line, it's on our talk as well. Yeah, it's on both. But yeah, we don't need to worry about that. If we're working outside of our normal zone, if the guys are travelling an hour, I don't need to bother finding a tip site for them unless it's a colossal job, because I know they can do the job and come back and they won't need to worry about tipping off.
Especially now we've got 2.
And we've got 2 now, so we can sell 2 7.5 tons.
Exactly that. And then the thing is, when you get a big job, like you're saying, if you do get a massive roadside job, you would, most people these days just contract in by a mass company anyway, so you're not going to get into that position. No. But yeah, there's a reason why G&T have been running 7.5 tonners for a long time. It's because they know they're a solid business, G&T. They've done very well in the last couple of decades, and they've run 7.5 ton trucks because they're on a schedule of rates. They need their guys out on site more than they do want to be running around tipping, as you say. So yeah, massive benefits. So what do you think are there cons of running lorries? Like, what do you think the negatives would be? Because we've talked a lot about the positives of it, but
I think it's only fair to mention your driver's license, your HGV license. That is a cost, and it's a little bit of a pressure for the guys that you put through it. It's not like getting your car license. There is a bit more to it. The theory side of things and what have you is not desperately straightforward. Equally, it's entirely achievable. And the way we see it for our lads that we're putting through, our team that we're putting through, this is a big thing for them in their lives.
This is part of the package for them.
Yeah, this is a perk for you as a person. An HGV Class 1 license is a good thing for you to have for your whole life, your whole future.
Well, because if you ever get made redundant, if you ever injure yourself and you can't climb anymore, like you can walk into a job that's fairly decent paid and it's not minimum wage.
No,
Basically.
there's
always a need for it.
Yeah,
so it's a massive. I used to have this block when I was thinking about this, and I used to think, oh, I'm going to spend $2.5 grand on a team member, and what if they leave next week, and then I spent all that money on them. But like actually, when I've thought about it, and I've been actually more logical with it, I've looked and gone, we're a good company to work for. We've got good company culture. We don't have a revolving door. Like we look after our team. Like generally, we don't have people leaving, like multiple people leaving at a time. So actually, what is the fear here? Like it's the right thing to do to upskill people in that kind of way.
I think we talk a lot in the mastermind about company culture and trying to make your company a good place to work for, and that's a big thing to give. When we talk about win-wins, and it's a win for us as the company, and it's a win for the team to have that licensing ability. Also, yes, it's an expensive process. It's one of the more expensive certificates you would put somebody through, but you wouldn't think twice about putting people through their chainsaw tickets and their climbing tickets, and that's just a necessary part of the job. Equally, the way we see it, this is a necessary part of the job.
Yeah, I agree.
You can look at it in a slightly different way, and there's an analogy to try and make people perhaps see it from a different angle. And it goes basically on what Steve just said about as an industry, we're employing people, so businesses above and beyond a small one-man operation. But if you are employing staff, we all know we have an obligation to keep them safe in the workplace. So therefore, we spend thousands of pounds a year putting people through chainsaw tickets, chipper tickets, stunt grinder tickets,
climbing an area
rescue, all the whole host of quals that we feel we should and we have to put people through to keep them safe by obligation as an employer. Every single day in an ARB company, somebody will drive an ARB vehicle out away from the yard and back to the yard. If that ARB vehicle is not fit for purpose and it's overweight and therefore it's illegal and it's dangerous to be on the road, which it is factually, then as an employer, we're not doing the right thing by those members of staff. And we're putting other road users at risk, and we're putting other people at risk in terms of damage to their vehicles, etc., when we have an accident because the vehicle didn't stop properly. And that's the reality of overloaded vehicles. Like Steve said there, we wouldn't think twice about putting guys through tickets to keep them safe, and we would be looked at as a bad employer if we had somebody climbing with a chainsaw that haven't done a climbing and aerial rescue ticket and a saw CS30 and 31 and CS39. That totals a lot more than the cost of HGV. Yet every day we are almost allowing people to put themselves at risk by driving vehicles that are inappropriate. So when you take a zoom out and look back in with that kind of view, it seems almost backward that we wouldn't go, yeah, they have to have an HGV. We have to put them in appropriate vehicles because it keeps them safe and it keeps other road users safe. Aside from all the productivity things that we've discussed, which are just about a business, but duty of care to these people that we're putting in vehicles.
Yeah, I agree.
And that sort of has always been a bit of a thing for me, that I don't expect anybody to drive a vehicle that I know isn't right and that isn't legal potentially some of the time. And the risk to other road use is real. And we're really good at spotting hazards and mitigating risk in terms of what we do, but don't overlook what guys are doing on the road.
Yeah.
It can't be overlooked.
Yeah.
When you get the phone call to say that one of your vehicles has been involved in an accident and that vehicle was potentially not operating within its manufacturer's limits, then like any accident in the workplace, we're going to have some questions to answer. And that sort of, again, the package deal and the way that we treat staff and the way the industry wants to be able to look after staff. And if you're a slightly larger company that wants to employ people cards in and you don't have a revolving door, as we don't either, like you don't, it doesn't cause us a problem to be throwing a few grand at that ticket, does it, at that course?
It's easy to be maybe almost blasé about it and say, we'll just pay it. It needs thinking about, it needs factoring in, but it does need factoring in. For us, it's just a necessity.
It's just part of the plan, isn't it?
It's doing the right thing.
Yeah. No, I can see that. It's why I'm ARB approved. People always say, why are you ARB approved? A lot of negativity in our industry about the ARB association, but it's because I know it's the right thing to do, because I know I'm doing the best by my team, because we're running a legitimate business that's got everything in place to ensure the safety of workforce. Yeah. And not only that, it's once you take away the morally right thing to do, one, as a business owner, everything comes back on us. If someone hurts themselves, whether it's be driving a work vehicle or hanging out in a tree, like it comes back to the business owner. It always does. It always comes back. You can't just point a finger and say, well, he was an idiot. It never rubs. It's down to us as having a duty of care. So I can see that. And with that duty of care mixed with the fact that your team is going to probably make you more money, it just starts going. Honestly, until you did that talk a year or so ago with the mastermind, I'd already thought it'd be good to get a lorry, but no, I'm not. And since you've done that, it's completely changed my perspective and gone, actually, this just makes sense morally, financially, safety wise. We're absolutely, if on the limit of a transit van, like the transit van's screaming, the brakes are screaming, the suspension's screaming, everything's just being used to its actually absolute extreme. So no wonder I'm getting a 52 grand bill a year on repairs. No wonder that's happening. And that 52 grand doesn't even take into consideration lost man hours, lost time, lost customers potentially, lost work, all those other things that factor into that 50 grand of cost for not having the right fleet of vehicles.
Yeah. There's also a sort of, again, a zoomed out way of looking back in at, I'm going to say ourselves as an industry, because it is an industry subject. It's not just about us, it's about trying to help and educate other people that it is achievable and why maybe you should consider it. But you only have to look at broadly similar industries and look at how they operate. So I know we are quite unique as an industry, but we're not completely unique. We're not that dissimilar to some others. So examples would be the construction industry and the groundwork industry. So they go and dig holes, they lift heavy stuff out of the ground, and they put it in skips that go on HGVs, or they have a grab wagon turn up to pick it up and drive it away from site. What you don't see is utility companies digging up the road or civil engineering companies putting clay or earth or stone into the back of transit vans. They've gone beyond that. They use appropriate vehicles. Now, you could argue that industry is completely different to ours. We're different. Yes, we are a little bit. But what the actual task that's occurring at that site is not that different. You've got a team of guys that have gone out with some hand tools to do a job that involves outside work, and they need to get something heavy away from site. And that's in a sense what we do. We turn up, we take a tree down, we have some heavy stuff on the ground that needs to disappear. So to do that with appropriate vehicles is so much better. And it's the same reason that other industries no longer use 3.5 ton vans to move heavy stuff.
People will be listening going, oh, it's all right for that industry because construction, they can make more money. But I've seen it, like in local to my village in Hythe on the edge of the New Forest, we've got a driveway guy company, quite a decent size one. They've got a few crews, and they've got a grab lorry that runs around to all their sites and picks up everything. And you could say the same about I certainly know the driveway industry. There's a lot of people similar to tree surgery that go out and do things cheaply, and there's a lot of people out there putting flyers through doors and all that kind of stuff going on, but they still maintain running a grab lorry because it makes sense. They've got transits that go, and I see them parked out all in my little area that I live in Hythe. That every driveway is done on repeat every few years. They're always up and down. There's millions of driveways, and they're there with their transit vans, and and they've got a mini digger. But then there's the grab lorry. They've got a hook loader lorry that turns up and drops kit off and picks stuff up, and it's just thinking in a different way. And I think we get so used to just doing things and going, oh, he's running an old firm, he's got transit shipper, I'll get that transit shipper. You just do it because everyone else is doing it, but actually there is a shift that away from the safety side of things, it just makes sense to be.
You just analyse the task. Is get your head a little bit out of our industry, what we've always done, how we always operate, like you say, how the guy next door operates. Just pull back from that a minute and look back and analyse the task of what your guys are doing every day. If they're cutting timber up into discs so it can be handballed into the back of a 3.5 ton van, that is not efficient. That burns fuel in your saws. It wears your saws out. You go through chains, shitloads of sawdust
to clear up.
Then it's bad for the manual handling.
Yeah.
If you have I'm not saying everyone could go out there and buy a grab truck. They can't. I know smaller firms can't do it. But if you have, or even if some firms have a grab truck and offer the service out to others, why would you not go, I've got the tree on the deck, the timber's left big, I don't need to cut it up now because there's a truck going to come and pick it up.
Yeah.
And if you stood back and watched those two jobs operating, one that cuts the timber up and one that has the appropriate vehicle to come and collect the timber, you would soon look at it and go, wow, there's a lot of inefficiency there, and that is a hell of an efficient way of doing it. And efficiency generally means more money.
Of course it does. The more you can churn your work, the more work you can get through. If you can suddenly go, there's 2 of us rather than 3 of us. We've got a lorry with a grab, and we've got another lorry with a decent sized chipper. We use a bit of mech, and you suddenly can go and do 10 grand in a week rather than 5 grand. Then
makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. Yeah. Agree. So I was just thinking, the other thing I've thought about is I don't really understand tacos and how they work. So is that you have to have a taco in every vehicle above 3.5 tonne, is that right?
Yeah, so manufacturer installation wise, yes. To tacos is a little bit of a grey area and it's a little bit open to interpretation. So what I will say is it's down to each company to read legislation and interpret it how they wish. And also, one of the deciding factors on whether you need to operate a taco is the distance that you run from your operating base. I can't quote the figures right now because I'm with legislation from
Sure.
However, most ARB companies, if you're not operating particularly far, and I think it's 100 kilometres radius from your base, but I'll be corrected on that, but it's on the website, you don't need to use a taco. And the other, in a 7.5 tonne, above 7.5 tonnes, you do. However, again, there are some slightly grey areas, but up to 7.5 tonne, most ARB companies won't need to worry about tachographs.
Yeah.
However, if you do want to use a tachograph, again, it's no big deal. You guys aren't driving for hours on end. You're not professional drivers. So that's where, again, if you interpret the tacho exemption, it's not, tachographs aren't designed for people who are driving from a base to a place of work where your job is a tree surgeon or a scaffolder or a ground worker. That's not what tachographs are there for. Tachographs are there for people who are driving professionally for hours and hours on end. So my opinion and my interpretation is that most companies will be tacho exempt.
Yeah.
I can't say that absolute, and there will be people out there that have been pulled by DVSA who've gone, why aren't you using a tacho? And they've had to explain it. Tachograph cards cost 32 quid. In some ways, it's easy to just use them, but have to explain why you're not doing it. It's not a massive deal.
And I guess the main thing is it's the reason why a tacho exists is to stop lorry drivers driving for a certain amount of time, getting tired and then falling asleep at the wheel.
It's not really
it's not what we're doing. As you say, that's for long haulage to stop people from clattering into other people when they fall asleep in their lorry.
There is a list of exemptions as part of the legislation, and on the government website there is a list of tachograph exemptions. If you can satisfy one of those exemptions and you can prove that, if you're ever questioned, that's cool.
Yeah,
I'll leave it for interpretation of every business owner to decide whether or not they feel they need to use tachos.
Yeah.
But they're not a big deal even if you do. It's not going to stop you doing your job.
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing to consider really is, we touched on it slightly, is that I think when you had your first lorry, what chipper did you have at the time?
So yeah, it was the Timberwolf 230. And yeah, particularly, to be fair, that worked fine.
It was all right.
It was fine. The game changer really was the grapple saw.
Yeah.
Grapple sawing trees down and trying to come through a 6-inch chipper doesn't work.
It becomes your bottleneck, doesn't it? The 6-inch chipper soon became the bottleneck, where we had this quite efficient way of getting trees on the ground. We had an efficient truck for moving the chip. The bottleneck was the chipper, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The direct correlation, the 7.5 ton truck with its bigger chip body enabled us to then go and buy 12-inch chipper, which then, when you work through again, zoom out and analyse the task. Bigger truck, bigger chipper, grapple saw, got a digger with a grab as well. All of a sudden, the whole system becomes an awful lot more efficient. Yeah. And that stemmed from that 7.5 ton truck. That was the first thing, wasn't it?
Without that, none of the rest of that would have happened.
No.
It certainly wouldn't have been grapple sawing trees down to put through a 6-inch chipper into a Land Rover. That would have been...
No. So it started, the growth in the company in terms of its fleet and its assets, its kit. And I know there's loads of people out there with big kit now. I'm not saying we're out there and amazing, but the way we operate is quite efficient. And we minimise the number of guys on site quite a lot. We're using the kit to find the efficiencies.
Yeah.
That all stems from the trucks, doesn't it? It's based on the fleet, and then the machinery around it is what sort of tops it off, isn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And that's the thing, you're just constantly finding better ways to be more efficient, because without, just keep repeating myself, that's what the game's about. How can you get more work done? How can you improve the top line? And having a look at all the bottlenecks and keep replacing them is an investment, and an investment that you're going to get paid back on. So
we believe so.
Yeah.
The proof for us has been in our numbers, in our profitability, our efficiency. We know it works for us. There'll be people out there that will disagree and will still say 3.5 ton vehicle and 6-inch chip is fine. That's cool. Each to their own. But we know that for our business, the way the decisions we've made about our fleet and our kit have made us very efficient. And as Steve mentioned before, we completed a tender process for some local authority work. And already when you look at the tree stock in that area, we know the area quite well. We know already that we're going to be so efficient doing that work because we've got slightly bigger trucks. We can travel a bit further. We've got bigger chipper. compared to a 3.5 ton van and a 6-inch chipper, we're going to be able to complete that work in a much more efficient way, which will hopefully be a win for the client because the prices might be slightly more keen because it's so efficient, but equally we'll make good money because we'll do it much quicker.
Yeah, and it's good, as you say, it's a good thing on the environmental impact. I know years ago when we had our Unimog, and that's a different podcast episode, Unimog, so we won't go too much into that. But I remember a council procurement officer saying, we wouldn't give you the contract. And I went, why? And she went, because you've got a Unimog, and Unimogs aren't good for the environment. And this is going to be something that the whole industry is going to have to consider more as unless you're running a Unimog on white diesel with a proper license and everything like that, that we are going to be subject to this whole net zero, being able to be more efficient, being more environmentally friendly. Like, it's going to happen, whether people are against it or not. It's going to need to be. And having yourself set up already with Lorries and being more efficient, that is going to be a big tick box as well, on top of everything, all the other benefits we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. To come back to what you said a few minutes ago, the pros and the cons. The pros, in our opinion, and in most people's opinion, to be fair, when we have conversations around the table, and when I've spoken to other contractors, the pros outweigh the cons. The licensing is it's an expense, isn't it? And it can take a bit of time. I can't think of any other drawbacks that we've ever thought, I wish I wasn't running these trucks.
I don't think we've ever thought.
Never.
I've started to see now on the mastermind, more and more of you guys have got 7.5 ton plus trucks. Rupert, James, the other guys, they're all running trucks, and the efficiency, and everyone sings the same tune. So I think it's just a case of untangling that mindset of this is how it's been done for a while, and actually looking around, and even, as I say, looking at G&T, the fact that they've run 7.5 tons trucks for 10 plus years, there's a reason, there's a business reason, and going back to business and knowing your numbers, that will then tell you the story. And I harp on about numbers all the time. Knowing that gives you the logical answers.
You've hit the L word there, the logical answer. That's a really interesting word to use, because if you brought someone in that wasn't in your business or in the industry, and again, they looked at the difference between operating 3.5 ton trucks versus 7.5 ton and above, the logical thing is to run the bigger vehicles. And that's from someone that doesn't need to know how to take a tree down, doesn't need to understand the ins and outs of the industry. Just the logic approach to moving stuff from job back to your yard, and how that's best done efficiently. The logical way to do it is with bigger vehicles.
Yeah.
And in as big bits as possible.
Yeah, in as big a bit with your timbering, as big a bits as possible.
Any video I've ever seen of America or Australia, they're running big lorries. Yeah. And I don't know what the bar to entry is in those countries. I know in the Americans it's probably a bit lower because everything's big and massive.
It is, but you see how efficiently they get trees down and away.
Yeah, absolutely. Half of them are running cranes on the back of them and all sorts. It's just about the efficiency. How much can they churn? It definitely is a way that we're going to move with HRG very soon. We've got one guy through already and looking to get a couple more through, and then slowly starting to move across. And 11 grand for a 7.5 ton truck that's 6 years old, that's done 80,000 miles.
Rigorously inspected, serviced, maintained.
The last two vehicles we've bought have been 50k plus, and they soon deteriorate as well.
Like I said, the current price for I'm not a Fuso Canter salesman, I'm not on commission, but the current, loosely speaking, 54, 56k is a quote I got for a Canter. Compare that to a quote for a Transit, it's not far off. So whether you're buying new or used, it's all comparable. And
yours has lasted 6 years, done whatever miles, and still in good condition. And if I had a 6-year-old van that I bought from brand new, I can guarantee you it'd be on its last legs. Even the 3-year-old Iveco we've got, it just doesn't feel like anywhere close to a decent truck now, because it's just been used so hard. Yeah. Cool. Great episode.
No problem.
Thank you for having us.
It's been really good. I'm really looking forward to working with you more, because I can see the foundations have been built, and plugging in a few extra bits. Looking forward to seeing it grow.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you really enjoyed this episode, please share it, comment, tell us what you think of it. If you want to follow these guys, where's the best place to follow you? Social media, LinkedIn,
Instagram, Facebook,
Instagram,
Tree Arb Services.
I'll put all the details in the description. But thank you, Adam, Steve. It's been really good.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.